I packed up within 10 days and landed in Dubai with 21 pieces luggage.
21.
Yeah. I sold my house as is, walk in. But landing here without a clue where to start.
This is very high conviction. You just packed up everything, sold your house, got 21 suitcases of luggage, moved to Dubai. Did you ever regret it?
Meet Muhammad Bana, Bitcoin reserve strategist and coach. 8 years in, 2 Bitcoin certifications. He studied cryptocurrency at MIT's Media Lab, then bet his life on building in Bitcoin.
You need to follow flow of money. Let's look at it. In history, the fastest growing companies, Microsoft and Apple, took 44 years to touch $1 trillion. And then you look at how long did Bitcoin do it? They did it in 12 years. It's growing 4 times faster.
Today, Bana advises founders and families on Bitcoin strategy, runs education initiatives, and is building an ecosystem from Dubai, turning conviction into practice.
A lot of Muslims will say Bitcoin is haram. The money that should be mine is technically the bank's. It's not even mine, that I have lawfully earned. You talked about $2 trillion in terms of the Bitcoin market cap. That's larger than the GDP of certain countries. It's larger than Spain's GDP, Canada's GDP. What do you say to them when they say it's already at the top?
Money is not a goal. The freedom in life is the goal.
Who is Satoshi?
He could be, there's many rumors, people come to conspiracy theory.
If you want to truly understand Bitcoin from someone who sold everything and went all in, then stay tuned. This is Beyond Possible.
When I think of you, I think of Bitcoin. And I think about the journey from what I know of you, of how you got to Bitcoin, why that plays such an integral role in your life. And I want to kind of unpack that. But at the top of the show, before we started rolling, you were mentioning that you're third generation. And, we all know, especially living in Dubai, people who are in different eras of their family's generational situation. I myself, I'm a first generation immigrant. What I like to tell my kids, I'm a first generation emigrant as well. So no matter how I look at it, I'm first generation. But from your perspective, would love to kind of understand where you fit in that and how that's impacted the decisions you've made, culminating in this kind of all-in philosophy when it comes to Bitcoin.
My grandfather, at the age of 13, left a small village in India called Dargeshwar. It's in the Surat province, right? And he came on a ship to South Africa at the age of 13. He started working in someone's clothing store. He learned the clothing industry, got married, had 5 sons, 3 daughters in Johannesburg. And then he got into his own clothing business. With his sons, he had the manpower, and they grew in the clothing industry to a point where down the line, they had their own textile mill, own yarn mill, and were very successful in that. And got pulled into the family business. I was very successful in sales in the family business. So early 2002, I opened my own company, side by side to the family business. We started traveling to China. We started supplying the chain stores. But where the switch came for me was, we got into the lockdown in COVID. Having your own business and seeing your business get to a standstill, ports were shut down. So for me, that was like the scary moment where a lot of people, if you just had a job, okay, you lock down, you go watch Netflix, you make TikToks, people were making cooking videos. Literally, people were doing this, right? And they were just waiting for their job to open again to go back to work. I was sitting there and literally stressing because you got 3 kids, you're self-financed, you're standing on your own 2 feet, and your goods, which you've paid for, are stuck in the harbor. And they weren't allowed because they weren't regarded as essential, like mask and medical equipment. So I started consuming till 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, macroeconomics. And one of the first 2 people I started watching was Max Kaiser from RT Channel. Other one was Raoul Pal, runs a channel called Real Vision. I came across Bitcoin. When I saw it, it was $9,000. I said, hold on. I actually bought this commodity, Bitcoin, in 2016, and I had paid $5,000. It went up to 7.5 in 3 months. So I looked at it, I'm 50% up. And in business, nothing gives you, as a businessman, on your income statement, 50% return. You don't get 50% in 3 months easily. So I sold it thinking it was like an equity.
You bought at 5,000, sold at 7,500.
Yeah, but within 3 months.
And you probably thought you had a great return.
It was great. It was. Even today, it's a great return. You buy something, you have no risk, right? You have self-custody. There was nothing to do. Just buying this commodity called Bitcoin. But I thought it's like investing in Apple or Amazon. And then when I saw the price at 9,000 in 2020, which wasn't too long ago from 2017, I said, hold on, if I didn't sell at 7.5, could have still been up, even though it had a swing. So I started going down what they call the rabbit hole. When you're passionate about something, anything, you're looking for answers. So I looked at gold. I actually purchased gold in like March, April of 2020. The next month, I purchased more Bitcoin. The next month, I said, okay, do I buy Bitcoin or gold? I started moving, let's say, asset allocation into Bitcoin. And the more I'd done this, the more the price was going up. So I started understanding why is it going up, started doing research. I started self-educating. Then I said, let me do a course. So I did an MIT cryptocurrency course. And I was amazed who was in the class. At that time, there was only 150 people internationally doing the course. And it was the likes of people from the Federal Reserve Bank, people from PayPal, okay? And I felt like I didn't belong in this class, all right? But studying at the age of 40 and going to university at the age of 20 had two different feelings. Because at the age of 20, I feel like you're going to university because it's a society norm. Some people say you do it for your parents, you just need the degree.
Yeah.
But here, you're really looking for a solution. You really have an interest. When COVID did stop and I managed to get my business back on track, I was so consumed by Bitcoin. I actually just stopped trading. I liquidated all my business assets and swung 100% into Bitcoin. I rode the wave up on that bull cycle, but I never understood Bitcoin cycles on the technical analysis. So you have fundamentals and you have technicals. And I never understood that a bear market would come, right? I thought we were going to the moon.
Rarely do people in that situation go into something, at least during the time that you did, as risky as and volatile as Bitcoin. Why were you different?
Studying Bitcoin, you understand, right, that it's a solution to inflation. When you study Bitcoin, you have to understand what problem is it solving. So it has a fixed supply of 21 million. If you take a standard item like a BMW entry 3 series level, or for that sake, a Polo VW, and you just do a 5 or 10-year chart, you see the price of the item going up. I even like to use Emirates airline ticket. Everyone thinks that price of the ticket of the airline's going up. It's actually the money getting weaker because it's the same car, it's the same ticket. If your money is weakening at 15% a year, and if you're not increasing your balance sheet at 15%, right, you're actually at zero. Let's look at the equity market. You can invest in the S&P 500 in America, but if it's growing at 15% per annum, but the price of a 3 Series BM is going up 20% year on year, you're actually going in a negative situation. If you had $1 million today, you could buy, just call it 3 BMW. And in a year's time or 2 years' time, you're only going to be able to buy with that money 1 BMW. Inflation is the problem. We were looking for a solution to break this norm of the third generation. And I carried on telling myself, I'm actually first generation. I don't want to be labeled as the first generation. From an Islamic aspect, I always look at it that why did the angel Jibreel alayhi salam tell the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam read as the first thing in the cave? He could have said prostrate, he could have said worship, he could have said submit, but he said read. And I found that the white paper of Bitcoin is only 9 pages. Okay. And today with ChatGPT, we can put the 9 pages into ChatGPT and say, summarize it.
What's the takeaway from those 9 pages?
The decentralization. The fact that we're living in a time when bank accounts can be frozen. The word self-custody. You want your wealth to be at your self-custody. We now realize the money in the bank, your money in the bank, is not yours. And there is no money in the bank. Because if you start studying how the banking system works, banks borrow up to 10 times what depositors put into the bank.
Understanding the bank, the fractional reserve system, did your background as a Muslim play a role in the way you understood Bitcoin versus the banking system? Because
Yes.
a lot of Muslims will say Bitcoin is haram. So I wanted to hear from the opposite perspective, that you're looking at this, you're saying, the money that should be mine is technically the bank's. It's not even mine, that I have lawfully earned. On top of that, the bank doesn't really have the money in the bank, which we all know. Where does the Sharia compliant Islamic finance, that kind of heritage, where did it frame your understanding?
There's a difference between having a perspective and an opinion. And if you read up yourself on a topic, you use your mind to have critical thinking and you become independent in your thoughts. And if 1,000 people say that this is white, but you look at it and say, no, I'm going to use my brains and this is black, you can make your own independent thinking. So if 1,000 Molanas say Bitcoin's haram, I said, let me go study it and make my own decision. And I realized that they probably didn't read the right material. They probably haven't even read the white paper. When you start understanding the banking system and you go deep into where dollars actually come from, you realize the system from the top is actually based on a full riba system, right? That the Federal Reserve Bank, who prints money out of fresh air, is a private entity. Okay, it's not a government entity. In the telephone book in America, you have like a yellow pages and a white pages. Federal Reserve Bank's phone number is in the private book, not a government entity. And they loan money to America on an interest base. So I sat and I asked myself some questions, and I'm just going to throw curveballs out there. Like, if the money starts on a riba basis, then it's tainted all the way through down. Okay. And that is why gold has appeal. Okay, because gold is something physical, gold is something.
And it's independent to the monetary system.
Yes, it's independent. From there, I made a decision, okay, that my surrounding environment, my location was not optimum for what I wanted to achieve in life. So when Bitcoin came down to 15,000, and I knew that was the bottom of the bear market, I had previously, like 6 months before that, opened a company called Global Institute of Wealth. And I wanted to share my findings with other successful business people in South Africa, particularly businessmen in the Muslim community. But when I made a few appointments, it was just going over their heads, right? So I packed up in about, March 2023, and I moved to Dubai. Okay. And then I went to Miami to the Bitcoin conference, and Bitcoin at that time reached about 26,000. We sat in the conference, and Michael Saylor was on stage. And I remember him saying that those that are here in a bear market, right, are the true believers of Bitcoin. It was very inspiring to be in his presence. Coming back to Dubai, I said, let me establish an office. Let me start, a business out of this. We realized that actually 99% of the people in the crypto market that are active actually just only understand USDT. Bitcoin is the first crypto, more than 50% of the entire cryptocurrency market. So you have one cryptocurrency, but you have another 2 million on this side, which are actually like companies.
What you were saying is that you packed up everything, you went all in on
Yes.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. I had to make a decision.
But why all in? Why not half-half?
You didn't diversify at all, which is fascinating.
Right? When you see the truth, when you understand it, and if you go study something deep enough, like a religion, okay, or like you support a soccer team, you see black and white. You don't see red. I mean, or gray. Let's call it gray for that matter, right? Black and white. So once I understood Bitcoin long enough, and I've been through one bull cycle, one bear cycle, I understood that the world, there's $900 trillion out there of money, right? There's a number. If we put all the money investments in the world on the table, it comes to around 900 trillion. The world is starved for a solution.
One thing we can talk about is that Bitcoin has no owner. It has no company. It's an immaculate asset in that sense. Now, for a person to pack up everything and say, you know what, I'm just going to dedicate my life to Bitcoin. How did you rationalize that with everyone
taking
around?
my wife.
Additional context was that you closed your business and then
You sold your assets.
you sold everything.
Yeah, I sold my house. I had a house next to my parents, which we built, 4 years before that. It was my dad's dream, to have his sons living next to him, in one yard. I just made up my mind that I had a frame. Actually, my sister-in-law gave me a gift one day, and it said, if not now, when? And I kept that in my office, at my home office. Next to the frame, I had the receipt of my purchase of my gold coins, and I had the receipt of my very first purchase of Bitcoin. It was a fraction. And I kept that. It was like my mini office
But
shrine.
let me ask you this. When you were making that decision, you go and talk to your dad or you talk to your wife. How do those conversations go?
But the truth no one knows is I sold my house without asking my dad. He was overseas, and I had to go to him and break the news that I've sold my house.
Did the word Bitcoin come up?
No, I just made it that from a monetary point of view, that there's not much opportunity left in South Africa. New opportunity. Yes, people will make money on the income statement. There's many people that will still make a lot of money going forward, right? But you need to follow the flow of money. Let's look at it. In history, the fastest growing companies, Microsoft and Apple, took 44 years to touch $1 trillion. And then you look at how long did Bitcoin do it? They did it in 12 years. It's growing 4 times faster. So, yeah, I had to break the news to my dad that I sold the house. And, funny enough, he had just come back from Umrah and he was very accepting to the idea. And he just told me one thing: you just remember you have 3 kids. They looked at it more from an Islamic point of view, like you got to keep them safe and whatnot. When the transfer of my house was done, I packed up within 10 days and landed in Dubai with 21 pieces luggage.
21.
Yeah. I sold like my house as is, walk in, but landing here without a clue where to start. Obviously, you've been to Dubai for a holiday before many times, but coming as a businessman, moving here, immigrating, making hijrah, what they call it. I stayed in a hotel for 20 nights, figured out my life, right? Where to stay. I needed an ID, a driver's license, whatnot. And the first thing I wanted to do was get to Miami, the Bitcoin conference. It was like only running for 3-4 years. So you're like one of the first people in a new industry. And it was very interesting how small it was, and to go and see the products that were out, like hardware wallets and companies that were in the industry. And you understand the sector was just, a baby. And it still is a baby.
This is very high conviction. You just packed up everything, sold your house, got 21 suitcases of luggage, moved to Dubai. Did you ever regret it?
I understood the adoption of the technology. So I had no fear when Bitcoin went to 15,000 to make this move. So, I made up my mind that, okay, this is the bottom 15,000 and we're going to go into another cycle. So why I had that conviction is because I understood the Bitcoin halving very well with the knowledge I acquired.
Let me ask you this. At that point, did you move most of your net worth into Bitcoin?
100% to
100%.
Bitcoin. Yes.
No stocks, no bonds, no real estate,
Nothing.
nothing.
Zero.
All Bitcoin.
I don't see a second asset
This is why
class
some say
account.
that a third generation loses it.
From 15,000 to now 100,000, okay, the percentage, there's not many income statements and other asset classes can compare with that. It was a risk, but I think in life, what my point was, when my grandfather got on the ship to come to South Africa, there was a lot of risk. At that time, there was no cellular phones, there was no fax machines, there was no way to communicate. You didn't know if you're even going to reach your destination. So people have to take risk. Okay, when Portuguese settlers set out, to discover South Africa and the spice route, there was risk. Mothers cried, wives cried. They didn't know whether their loved ones were going to come back. Educate yourself first, get the knowledge, and be independent. If 1,000 people are saying something silly or wrong, it's still wrong.
Is it fair to say that everyone has the privilege of taking that risk? Can anyone take the risk that you
Anyone can
did?
take the risk.
You think so?
Yeah, it's, as I said to you, like you moved to Dubai, I moved to Dubai. There's a lot of people moving to Dubai, but yet there's very few people moving to Dubai because we 8 billion people in the world. 8 billion people. Okay, yes, there's a financial cost to moving to Dubai. 7 billion people have access to the internet out of 8 billion people. So we're living in a time when people can search a different location, right? I like to use this analogy. If we're living in a small village, right, with your family, and you start noticing every night there's a snake coming around the village and a lion coming, right? You have a choice to pack up with your family and move over the mountain into a new area where there is no snakes and lions. Everyone has heard of Dubai and they have a choice. But there's only 4 million
But
people
I want
here.
to ask something. You're correlating Dubai with opportunity. You couldn't do this from South Africa?
I read in a book once, right, that positioning and location is so critical in life. Now, coming back to that frame, if not now, then when? So when I say positioning and, location, when Ronaldo gets crossed the ball, he has to be in a good position, right? And
To have a chance.
to have the chance to kick it in one kick into the goal. Or a surfer.
You got to increase the odds of success.
Yeah, I like to look at surfers for that. Look, when you stand at the ocean and you look at people surfing, there can be 50 people in the water. And a lot of time, only one person catches the wave, right? But if you're 5 meters in front or 5 meters behind, you don't catch the wave. Okay, so this is what I saw. I said, okay, there's going to be a wave of $1 trillion, not millions. And let me tell this to the users. Everyone hears of $1 million, and then the year of $1 billion, and then the year of $1 trillion. The sheer scale of difference between a billion and a trillion. You need 999 million to make a billion. And to get 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion, you need another 999 million each time. But to get to Bitcoin's now $2 trillion,
It's incredible.
you need 999 billion plus another 999 billion to get to 2 trillion. Now, there's no asset class growing at this pace. Let's call it a boom. And that's why I carry on referring to Dubai as a second example.
You're saying that Dubai and Bitcoin correlate to being in a good position.
As asset class, right? I could have sold everything, moved to Dubai, and invested 100% in Dubai real estate. Dubai real estate has been on a rip for the last 5 years, ever since COVID finished. You could have gone all in on that asset class. Ever since COVID's finished, gold's been on a rip. Gold's at an all-time high. So it's a second asset class. I'll tell you this. You got to look at every dollar in your pocket as a soldier. And you have to allocate that soldier to one location. You know, what people fail to understand in simple terms, imagine we had a rice paddy and someone works the whole day in the rice paddy. So it's labor, it's their time, and we give them $1. And the next day they work and we give them $1. So over a year, they got $365. So that represents their labor. And on the other hand, we have America Federal Reserve Bank just printing $3 trillion overnight. So 40% of dollars in history have been printed in the last 4 years. So they've erased the labor of their own population by 5 years. I know it's technical, but some people will get it. Now let's get back to these soldiers. I'm saying I could have, or anyone can, and a lot of people have put their soldiers, their hard-earned labor, right, into real estate. And it has gone up, but by a certain percentage. But at the same time, there's risk. You could buy gold. You could buy silver. You could buy copper. It's a commodity.
Or you could buy a combination of all of this.
Yes, but the idea is to find the highest ROI because you want to optimize. Money is not a gold. The freedom in life is the goal. The freedom is that your balance sheet buys back your time. If that laborer in the field gets $365 from a rental income, they actually don't have to work for the year. They're buying back an entire year's of labor. So if they get back, let's just call it $700, they're now getting 2 years labor. Okay. So if you're a normal person's living expenses, just call it $10,000. The moment their property investment can pay them $10,000, they're actually more relaxed.
That's financial freedom for them.
Financial freedom. The rich chase the money, but the wealthy chase freedom. I play this game actually with myself for the last 4 years. You say to yourself, if I had $100 million, what would my 7 days of my week look like? Because now you have enough money to do whatever you want.
What have you found when you play this game?
Funny enough, you turn a lot to spirituality. Because if you had $100 million, you wouldn't miss any prayers. So you start writing down the 7-day of the week schedule and you start saying, oh, I would want to be in the mosque every day because I have $100 million. I would want to read the Quran. I would want to give charity. I would want to spend time with my family and loved ones. Because you had $100 million, you don't have to work till 1 o'clock in the night in your office, right? And obviously you go down this line and you realize there's a circle of life, right? Where you have to have health. Because they say like everyone has 100 problems until you don't have your health, then you have one problem. And what you realize when you do this exercise, that 95% of the stuff doesn't need $100 million. To get to the mosque, you don't need $100 million. To stop eating sugars and eating junk food, you don't need $100 million.
You can do it right now.
The point of money is to buy back your time. So let's say, for a simple example, a lot of people have a helper at home. So you don't have to make your own bed. You don't have to cook. You don't have to drive if you have a driver, right? In Dubai, we used to noon and telebar. You don't even have to go to the supermarket. The question is, what do you do with this time? You know, I was chatting to ChatGPT. I find it very useful. I want a life without emails. And is it possible? I want a life without clients. Is it possible? Yes. If someone has $10 million and forget Bitcoin, they put it in gold or real estate, they can bring their inbox almost to zero. They can bring their meetings almost to zero. But that's a choice. It is there available for everyone. ChatGPT asked me this. It says, oh, so you want to think out the box. And I said, no, I don't even want a box. Why do we have to think out the box? Why even have the box?
One of the questions that I get a lot from people about Bitcoin, and these are people who are sitting on the fence, who are thinking about putting their money in. The question is, am I too late? How do you react to that?
Let's say at 1997, everyone heard of a mobile phone, but not 8 billion, 6, 7 billion people had a mobile phone. Okay. And it takes time for technology to get adopted. So let me, to give real perspective to technology. Bitcoin's technology, a mobile phone's technology, the fax machine was technology, a microwave was technology. If you go sit with your mom, she'd tell you when she probably got married or at that time, like early life, they never had a microwave.
But how do we know Bitcoin doesn't become a fax machine? Because the people on the fence,
Yes.
they may agree that it's come a long way. We're now at the iPhone stage. But how do we know that this iPhone isn't a fax machine? How do we know Bitcoin doesn't just go down the wayside?
The arguments that they make are exactly the same arguments that you have just made, right? So you talked about $2 trillion in terms of the Bitcoin market cap. That's larger than the GDP of certain countries. It's larger than Spain's GDP, Canada's GDP. What do you say to them when they say, hey, it's already at the top?
Actually, glad you'll ask this because it brings me to this factor of fixed supply and scarcity. For something to go up in value has to have 6 qualities. So let's look at a prison. What is money in a prison?
Cigarettes.
Cigarettes. There is no currency in a prison. But if you got a box of cigarettes, you can get people to protect you. You can get people to do you favors. Okay. Why? What's the factor in that situation? Cigarettes are so scarce and in such high demand. When you take this topic of scarcity, money has to have 6 characteristics. Something has to have 6 characteristics to be declared.
What are the 6 characteristics?
One of the strongest is scarcity. Pokemon cards has scarcity. That's why it has value. A Birkin handbag has scarcity. A Rolex watch, like in COVID, the Daytona Rolex watch, prices were going through the roof because the Rolex factory was closed. There was no production. That's scarcity. Then you need transferability. Ownership then changes hands. If you've got a Pokemon card or a Birkin handbag or a Rolex watch, but you only need half the money or half a favor.
Yeah, you won't be able to cut a
You
Birkin
won't be
bag in
able
half.
to cut it up.
Yeah.
So you need divisibility. Like a dollar can be divided to cents, right? Then you need proof that it's real. Like if I give you a gold coin, you need verifiability because you don't want to be given a fake coin. Transferability, scarcity, divisibility, verifiability, preserving. It needs to be something that, can last a long period of time. If you think about it, if you leave a gold coin for your great-grandchildren, it's a very good chance, if it's looked after and stored in the right place, it still will be in its optimum form. But if you leave a Birkin handbag for your great-granddaughter, yes, it has scarcity, but it might tarnish. Salt used to be used as a means of exchange in the old days. Spices were used as trading mechanisms. But you would not want to leave 1 year of your labor in salt. Imagine you work the whole year, you get paid, and you buy, a warehouse of salt. You wouldn't want to leave that for the next generation because it can spoil. So coming back to topic on Bitcoin, okay, Bitcoin is a far superior product, okay, on all these 6 qualities. And for some people that can't understand Bitcoin and they say, I've been approached by many people and say, oh, we can't see it, we can't touch it. Okay, if I gave you 1,000 American Express miles, will you take it? Or if I give you 1,000,000 American Express miles, if I give you Skywood points, you can't see it, you can't touch it, but you understand that it can be used as a medium of exchange. Money has to be a medium of exchange and a store of value. But right now, where Bitcoin sits with the amount of users we have from 8 billion people, the users are so small, it's only being used as a store of value. Like gold currently is a store of value. It's not a medium of exchange. You cannot go to the coffee shop downstairs and use gold to pay for your coffee. But if you got $1 million of gold, you are storing your wealth.
So you're saying it's still early because eventually Bitcoin will become the medium of exchange.
For something to become a medium of exchange, you need mass adoption. What use is it of it if he doesn't have an email address and I don't have an email address? So the first person who ever got a BlackBerry, example, or let's use like a cell phone. You're the first person in your class at school to get a cell phone. You still can't phone any of your friends.
What would happen if every millionaire in the world wanted one Bitcoin?
So right now we have about 75 plus minus $1 million millionaires. Okay. And there's only 21 million Bitcoin ever going to be produced. We're sitting at around 20 million already. Okay. So there's not enough Bitcoin for each person to own. If we just focus on dollar millionaires, why have all of them not yet invested in Bitcoin? It's simply the fact they haven't understood that we have a solution to a problem, right? They know the problem is inflation. They're seeing the property prices go up.
So what happens when they do?
That causes simple, in economics 101, when I did go to university, the very first day, they just draw a graph with 2 lines and they say supply and demand. The supply and demand of gold is what creates the price to go up. Okay, the reason gold is at an all-time high is that the demand is higher than the supply, right? But what happens in the world is we don't have a fixed supply of gold. We can still find gold. Pakistan found a gold mine. So they increasing the supply.
And that meets some demand.
And that meets some demand. But this is the first time in history that we're able to create fixed supply. Okay, it's the same with art. Okay, it's once Leonardo da Vinci died, right? The Mona Lisa. There's only one Mona Lisa. The value of the Mona Lisa would always be, at an all-time high because there cannot be a second one, right? But the problem with gold as an asset class, or even property for that matter, is land is not scarce, even in Dubai. Yes, the price goes up, but there's always, they can build a Palms and then they build Jabal Ali. But coming to an asset class like Bitcoin, the daily production is fixed. So, now we're getting more technical when you understand the production. Where does Bitcoin, come from? And how does mining work? And how does the servers work? So right now we're sitting at a time where 450 Bitcoin get produced from the algorithm to be given to the world as a gift, right? To share. So whether you're a billionaire
450 over what time frame?
daily,
Daily.
but this production changes every 4 years, right? So before April last year, the production was 900 Bitcoin. And 4 years before that, it was 1,800.
And when does this production come to an end?
In the year 2140. But it will take 40 years to produce the last Bitcoin. This is another whole chapter and topic just to look at the production, the supply of Bitcoin.
You spoke a bit about the Bitcoin white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto. And you once said something really interesting where you compared him to Prophet Moses. What is that analogy? Help us understand that comparison.
Who is Satoshi Nakamoto and why don't we know who he is? I sat with this question for very long and I've come to my own, analogy and conclusion. Whoever has spoke against the monetary system in history actually was killed because those that control the monetary system, the simple fact of, power. What is power? What is greed, right? Power is those that have the money, and money leads to greed. Julius Caesar was stabbed 23 times in the back because he spoke against a monetary norm, which was called coin clipping. So the Romans they had a production of coins, and to make inflation, to inflate the money supply, they started clipping the coins. And when you got 1,000 clippings, you can melt it and make new production of money. So Satoshi Nakamoto looked at history and said, listen, I'm going to remain anonymous. This is the conclusion I've come with.
So you think he did it to save his own life?
Yes. And another interesting fact, to be a commodity and not a company, a commodity does not have a CEO. There is no CEO and head office or physical location address of gold or of silver. If I tell you, can you deliver this pen to the head office of gold, where do you go to? But if we say, let's go give this to Facebook or Amazon or Apple, There's a CEO, there's a marketing team and whatnot. The true believers of Bitcoin and those that understand it, people like me that come onto podcasts, we are the marketing team, right? And how it works is human nature, when you discover something like a safer land, like you move from one land to a safer land that doesn't have risk, you want to take your family members, you want to educate your family on it, you want to share that opportunity with them because nobody wants to see their loved ones suffer. When you buy Bitcoin, you are storing your labor, you're exchanging your money for something that cannot be confiscated by banks or confiscated by governments and frozen, right? And has pristine value. So one Bitcoin today, if you leave it for your great grandchildren and they receive it, there's actually no diminishing quality in it. Like, like how I said, salt can go off or bread can go off. Or even if you leave a property, I'll tell you what's the problem with the property. You leave a farmland, just call it 1,000 square meters for your great grandchildren. The government can come and say, we need to put a road through this, or we are increasing the rates and taxes on this here. What happens now? You got 20 grandchildren. They have this one property. One grandchild says, I need $10,000. I'm an heir to this land. I need 10,000. How are you going to divide that land up, right? With Bitcoin, you can divide one Bitcoin by 100 decimal places.
So let me ask you this. They say that, Bitcoin is the first asset class that was made by the common man. They say that stocks were made by rich people,
Yeah.
right? They say that bonds were an instrument of rich people. They say that Bitcoin is the first asset class made by a common man for the common man. Do you think that holds true?
It's the first time, I'm hearing that line, but it is known as the freedom money and the choice. So anyone with a mobile phone and access to the internet has the choice to be exposed to this asset class. Now, we can't go around with a gun and force someone to invest in it, but they have a choice, right? You have a choice of what apps to put on your phone.
If you're 25 years old right now, what would your advice be?
If you have a job, like Michael Saylor says, if you're a dentist right now, no one's asking you to stop being a dentist. Continue, be passionate about your day job. But when you're getting your money from your income statement and you need to have a choice to invest it on your asset classes, on your balance sheet, we say allocate monthly to Bitcoin. So whether you're buying at 100,000 today and the price drops to 80,000, and if every month you're putting $100, let's use this as an example, you'll be buying at $80,000. And if it goes to 150, 350, but over a period of time, you'll have a dollar cost average. And you're doing this for your next generation. I say Bitcoin's not a short-term investment. The world still has to adopt it. Let me finish on the Moses topic. When I look back in history, when does someone ever create something, right? And have love for the creation and still want to distance themselves from ownership of it. And I looked at the time when Prophet Musa alayhi salam, Moses, was born. And at that time, the mother had to make a decision, right, to forego ownership of the son, put him in the river Nile, send him and distance ownership because she loved the child and wanted the child to live. So I'm saying to you, I've come to the conclusion that Satoshi Nakamoto, he created the perfect money that could be divisible by 100 decimals, money that can move across borders within minutes, money that can be verified. If I send Rafi right now a Bitcoin, there's 70 computers in the world that have to verify it. It's verifiable, it's divisible, it's pristine money. Once he created it, I think his job was done, and he was so proud of his creation that he chose to distance himself for it to be successful. That's the only analogy I came through in history. I said, when Moses' mother distanced herself, his life was spared because he got picked up by Pharaoh's wife, and she adopted him, and he lived.
So in this sense, what you're saying, just to make this clear, is that Satoshi let Bitcoin go down that river. Bitcoin found itself in this big bad world of greed and a riba-based economy. That's what gave it a chance to succeed, because people like you and I found it.
Yes.
Saying that, this is the one shining star in the world that is rigged against the average person.
Yes, I would say it survived because, he's distanced himself. We don't know what would have happened if we knew who Satoshi was and if someone could kill him or threaten him to change the code. Satoshi Nakamoto could be alive. He could be actually maybe more than one person. It could be a group of people. We don't know. There's many rumors. People come to many,
Yeah.
what did I say?
Conspiracy
Conspiracy
theories,
theories,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Who Satoshi Nakamoto is.
Going back to that, what people say that, Bitcoin was the first asset class, honestly, in human history that originated by a common person. And I think there's enough proof in what Satoshi did in the first block. He had that article, was it for the Financial Times?
Yes, it's a Genesis block. It
And-
was
and-
the
and what-
headlines.
And what was the headline?
The headlines was the Feds are bailing out banks.
So Satoshi, just for everyone to understand, in the first block of Bitcoin, effectively put a graffiti statement on
Yeah. I call it the intention.
the intention, where he referred to a headline that said,
The Feds are bailing out the banks.
what that indicated to a lot of us is that
Set the tone.
Satoshi, that set the tone, saying that, look, this is an asset class that is meant for the average person to be able to live a free life financially against a system that is not set to support them. And I think what that said to all of us is that that this is an asset that we can all jump on board. It's decentralized, it's for everybody. And I think the way to kind of close that metaphor is that the values he set out with are now starting to be seen. Again, supporting the markets that we talked about, whether it's Pakistan, Lebanon, markets. You have this note here on the table of 10 billion Zimbabwean dollars, right? Bitcoin has proven that it supports people who are dealing with this sort of high inflation.
Michael Saylor once said that there are decades when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when Bitcoin happens. And I think that really kind of summarizes a lot of what you're talking about. But one of my favorite quotes from Michael Saylor is a bit more poetic, which I want to get your reaction on as well. He once said that Bitcoin is a swarm of cyber hornets serving the goddess of wisdom, feeding on the fire of truth.
I want to add to that. Naval Ravikant, he had a saying that knowledge is abundant, is the desire to learn that's scarce. Okay. We live in a day and age where a 10-year-old has access to the internet in his own bedroom. He can choose what to do with his time. The shortest surah in the Quran is the most powerful surah, in my opinion. And God knew that man is lazy. Surah Wal As, which says, verily by the oath of time, man is at a loss. So every 10-year-old has the time in his life that he's going to pass time to reach the age of 15, example. He has the time with his mobile phone today, and he can choose whether to read, whether to educate himself. So knowledge is abundant. The desire to learn is scarce. You have situations where people like Elon Musk were learning coding at a young age. They chose that path. So I'm saying the knowledge of what Bitcoin is available from 2008. You have to have the desire to go read up on it. Bitcoin solves not one problem, it solves multiple problems. And we have this note here from, a $5 billion note from Zimbabwe. And one of the things that Bitcoin solves, is inflation. Now, what's the opposite of inflation is deflation. So inflation is caused when they print more money. And what we touched on the topic was that the supply of Bitcoin is actually deflationary, right? Never in history of mankind has a commodity that we've discovered
Bit of this nature.
deflationary,
Beautiful.
right?
That's great.
Because, man has the brain capacity that once we discovered how to make a car or a steam engine, we only increased the supply. Once we discovered what gold was, every year we look for more gold. Once we discovered, residential accommodations, we increase it. But whoever discovers Bitcoin cannot increase the supply. And the algorithms written from 2008 on launch, that it will be a diminishing supply. So we also have this note is 100,000 Lebanese currency, right? And we have a $5 billion Zimbabwean note. Here's a 200,000 Zimbabwean note. And countries like Venezuela, Lebanon, Zimbabwe have experienced hyperinflation, and people suffer, families suffer a lot of hardship going through hyperinflation. right? You wouldn't want your family to be in a situation where every day your assets are losing 50% value. Your money, let's call it your money. And there's nothing you can do about it.
And it's for other
Okay?
people's decisions and other
Yes,
circumstances.
you want your family to be secure. You want your next generation to be financially secure.
So for people who are watching you right now who are still on the fence, what are your final words of wisdom for them?
It's not for a person that knows about Bitcoin to convince the next person. It's like a religion, right? I'm using that as, people say, we have a cult, like a Bitcoin cult. I say, you have to go and educate yourself, read up on it, and convince yourself. The thing is, Michael Saylor says this, and Michael Saylor, is owns a listed company on the stock exchange, or is the CEO of a listed company that holds the largest reserve of Bitcoin currently in the world, right? And he said that you have to spend a minimum of 100 hours reading. That's why I said that if people are not willing to read for 100 hours to find a solution to store their wealth for their next generation, then do they deserve Bitcoin?
Couple of quick questions, just want rapid fire answers. Who is Satoshi?
He could be Jack Dorsey.
Okay. That's it. That's all I want to know. And what is your end of the year price prediction on Bitcoin?
I would say maybe 350,000.
And at the end of next year?
We would have a correction. I don't like to I avoid the word crash. For people out there, I'd say, be careful what headlines you read, because people refer to things like crashes where it should have been a correction.
I'll tell you what you've done for us. You made this podcast very scarce and thus very valuable. So really appreciate it. Muhammad Bana, thank you for
Thank you,
joining us.
Muhammad.
Really.
It's an honor to be here. And I hope our future podcasts would benefit many people, because at the end of the day, knowledge needs to be passed down.
Very powerful. Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Thank you. Thanks.